Red and Blue Streets, African-American Civil War fought in Los Angeles. In the heart of Los Angeles, a vibrant yet harrowing tapestry unfolds. Red and Blue Streets delves deep into the intricate web of African-American street gangs, with a special focus on two of the most notorious, the Crips and the Bloods. Through powerful research, raw footage, and in-depth analysis, this documentary explores the origin, evolution, and cultural significance of these gangs within the African-American community. From their inception in the 1960 seconds to their transformation into sophisticated drug trafficking networks, the film sheds light on the allure, the lifestyle, and the harsh realities of gang life. The red and blue colors, synonymous with Bloods and Crips respectively, are not just symbols of division but also a reflection of a shared history and social experience. Despite their rivalry, this film reveals the unexpected ways in which members of these gangs cooperate outside Southern California, setting aside differences for business pursuits. An exploration of the roles of women, the significance of drug sales, and the psychology behind gaining respect within the gang. Red and Blue Streets paints a complex picture of a world that is often misunderstood. It's a story of struggle and ambition, violence and redemption, suffering and resilience. Featuring personal accounts from former gang members, law enforcement professionals, and scholars, the documentary provides a balanced and nuanced perspective. From the vibrant streets of Los Angeles to the dark corners of crack houses, it takes the viewer on a journey through a subculture that has shaped and been shaped by African-American identity and history. Seneca Shakur's philosophy of reputation and respect serves as a unifying theme, weaving together the threads of individual, set, and collective identities. The documentary captures not only the chaos and conflict but also the sense of belonging, loyalty, and even the tradition within these communities. Red and Blue Streets is not just a film about gangs. It's a reflection on the human condition, a societal mirror held up to all of us, challenging our preconceptions and inviting us to understand, empathize, and engage. Join us in exploring a world that's more than just red and blue, a world rich in shades,
in the sun-soaked lands of Southern California, the roots of African-American gangs stretch back nearly a century.
The 1920s marked the emergence of early Negro street gangs, distinct from the notorious Bloods and Crips that would later capture the national consciousness.
These early street factions were unlike the highly organized and violent entities we know today. Like other street gangs, they were bound by shared circumstances, needs, and understanding. But the story of African-American gangs in Southern California is shrouded in mystery. Documentation is sparse, leaving the formation of the now infamous Crips and Bloods open to speculation. Several theories propose their development, but concrete evidence is elusive. What is not elusive, however, is the violence that erupted between the two factions. The conflicts between the Crips and Bloods are etched in the annals of history, a dark reminder of the struggles within marginalized communities. Unique characteristics within the African-American community have played a part in facilitating and motivating gang membership.
Social and world events have shaped these gangs' behaviors, leaving a complex legacy that still resonates today. But what were these unique characteristics? How did social and world events influence this part of history? The answers are as multifaceted as the subject itself, opening a window into a world often overlooked, yet vital in understanding the fabric of America. The 1920s in South-Central Los Angeles were a time of change and adaptation.
African-American street gangs began to form, their members often drawn from families and close-knit circles of friends.
Unlike the gangs of later decades, these early groups were involved in limited criminal activities, forging a gangster image and seeking ways to enhance their income. They experienced biases akin to those endured by early Mexican settlers on the West Coast. As the decades rolled on, from the 1920s through the 1950s, African Americans in the West Coast faced the dual challenges of the Great Depression and World War II. The mechanisms that shaped the nation's first street gangs in New York were mirrored in Southern California. Youth groups were in a state of constant flux. Gangs like the Goodlows, Kellys, Driver Brothers, Magnificents, Bludgetts, and the Boozies operated around Los Angeles' Imperial Freeway. The Boozies, for instance, comprised a family of brothers and friends involved in criminal enterprises like prostitution, robbery, and forgery. What set these gangs apart was the age of their members. Many African American youth didn't join the gang life until around 20 years old, a phenomenon that differentiated them from Mexican street gangs. A significant change began when African Americans moved into areas like Linwood, Watts, Slauson, and Manchester/Firestone, once predominantly occupied by white families. This movement triggered what became known as white flight, transforming South Los Angeles into a hotbed of street gang activity. White flight represented an avoidance mechanism, a reaction to changing demographics and an influx of African American, Mexican nationals, and Mexican Americans. Crime rates shifted, quality of life changed, and a mixture of personal safety issues, cultural misunderstanding, and stereotyping fueled a growing sense of dismay among the original residents. As neighborhoods transformed, so did the dynamics of gang life, planting the seeds for a complex and multifaceted evolution that would continue to shape the streets of Los Angeles. As the calendar turned to the 1940s, the landscape of African American street gangs in Los Angeles began to change and expand. A surge in numbers and size marked a new era, with gangs like the Purple Hearts, 31st Street, and the 28th Street gangs emerging as influential forces. Engaging in activities such as prostitution, forgery, gambling, extortion, and robbery, these gangs were highly effective in coercing local merchants, much like their Indo-Chinese counterparts. Yet, conflicts between African American gangs were seldom and often settled with nothing more than a fistfight. Two major periods of African American gang growth have been identified by researchers, post-World War II to 1965, and 1970 to 1972. A migration from the South to fill wartime jobs in Southern California ignited the first significant formation of black gangs in the late 1940s. Geography played a pivotal role in this development. Restrictive regulations dating back to the 1920s, denying non-whites the ability to own property, forced African Americans into specific areas, leading to chronic overcrowding and substandard housing in neighborhoods like Central Avenue. Resentment and animosity grew as African Americans challenged these regulations. Attempts to integrate public schools and fight housing discrimination met with violent reactions from some white Angelenos. In nearby communities, white teenagers formed terrorizing clubs like the infamous Spook Hunters, who focused on confining African Americans to their neighborhoods through intimidation and violence. These were the first racially motivated street gangs in Los Angeles, predating the racist skinhead street gangs of the 1980s. This social confrontation was not confined to Los Angeles. White gangs like the Dirty Dozens in Chicago and the Dukes in Queens, New York, instigated racial conflicts. A race riot in Chicago in 1919 led to the formation of African American gangs for protection against hostile white hoodlums. Fear of attack acted as a unifying force among African American youth. The social conditions of class distinction, racism, and bias created a psychological and geographical segregation, facilitating youth involvement in street gangs. By the late 1940s, African American youth began to form gangs like the Businessmen to protect themselves against assaults, overcrowded living conditions, and social segregation. This was the genesis of a phenomenon that would continue to evolve, reflecting the challenges and complexities of the time. As the 1950s dawned, a new generation of African American youth groups began to form in South Central Los Angeles, evolving from the earlier gangs of the 1930s and 1940s. These groups were now more than just gangs, they became active social organizations engaging young African Americans in a vibrant cultural scene. House parties, car clubs, Friday night school dances, and socializing at popular roller skating locations became the primary activities. There was a sense of camaraderie and connection, but one key requirement remained: membership was determined by the neighborhood. Popular car clubs such as the Coasters, Highwaymen, Road Devils, Gladiators, Slauzens, Watts Farmers, Blood Alley, Huns, and Businessmen became central to this era. These clubs were territorial, often disorganized, and membership was small. Yet, they held a significant place in the social fabric of the community. Gang rivalries intensified, and fights between car clubs became commonplace. But unlike the brutal conflicts of later decades, black-on-black murder was rare during this period. Most disputes were settled through physical confrontation, with the car club boasting the most standing members declared the winner.
Despite these social transformations, many club members remained engaged in criminal activities such as extortion, robbery, gambling, and assaults. The landscape was shifting, and smaller neighborhoods began to band together or join larger ones for protection. This new collaboration became the forerunner for the West Coast African American street gangs we recognize today. The 1950s marked a turning point, acting as a catalyst for substantial growth in gang membership and an increase in criminal sophistication. A notable change occurred as gang members became younger, with teenagers now joining the ranks of street gangs. The 1950s were a decade of transformation, where social clubs, neighborhood ties, and youthful energy fused together. These were the years that shaped the foundations of the African American street gangs, reflecting a community grappling with identity, survival, and social change. The 1960s marked a new era for African American street gangs in Los Angeles. Gangs adopted distinct names such as the Slozans, Gladiators, Huns, Watts, Avenue Boys, 135s, and the Valiants. Territorial rivalries intensified, as the gangs began to refer to their separate territories as sets, often defined by major streets or urban landmarks. The Avenues, an offshoot of the Slozans, were sometimes referred to as the Kitchen Crips. Tensions between gangs grew, leading to escalating conflict. This was a time when gang activity swelled, and black awareness reached its peak. Many African Americans were involved in political movements and social change, with some gang members joining groups like the Black Panthers. African American gangs also began strategizing against white intimidation and efforts against integration, viewing their formation as a legitimate defense against systemic injustice. White flight left Central LA as a black enclave, with the African American communities of Watts, Central Avenue, and West Adams merging into one large, diverse area. This demographic shift led to a reaction in the social dynamics of street gangs. With the common enemy of white gangs gone, African American gangs turned inward, sparking a significant amount of gang-related incidents. By 1960, gang rivalry had resulted in 6 murders according to the LAPD, highlighting a growing concern over black-on-black gang violence. Leadership was based on popularity, ability to fight, and material assets. Hand signs, inspired by African American fraternal societies, were used to identify specific sets. As gangs multiplied, conflicts increased, with fights often involving weapons like bumperjack handles, baseball bats, chains, and knives. Illegal activities persisted, including strong-arm robberies, burglaries, assaults, dice games, and narcotic sales. Popular drugs included amphetamines, barbiturates, and marijuana. A certain behavioral sophistication began to develop within African American street gangs. The mid to late 1960s saw a substantial decrease in gang activity, influenced by the Vietnam War, heightened black awareness, and the presence of militant organizations. These factors combined to pull African Americans away from local street gangs. The watershed moment came with the Watts riots in 1965. After the Watts Rebellion, and in tandem with the Black Awareness Movement and the Vietnam conflict, many gang rivalries ended. Black youths turned their attention towards social issues plaguing their communities, becoming politically mobilized. The 1960s encapsulated a paradox of growth and decline in African American gang activity. It was a decade where the struggle for civil rights, societal reactions, and political mobilization shaped the evolution of street gangs, reflecting a complex interplay between identity, conflict, and societal change. During the tumultuous period of 1969 to 1970, the emergence of the Crips marked a significant turning point in African American gang history. The history of how the Crips got their name is as multifaceted as it is debated, with several versions of the story existing. Version 1, the most widely accepted theory, attributes the name to Raymond Washington, who used a cane or was confined to a wheelchair, leading to the nickname Crip for crippled. Version 2, this unlikely theory suggests the name originated from the television show Tales from the Crypt. Version 3, this theory posits that the Crips are an offshoot of the Slozan Street Gang, though there's little evidence to support this claim. Version 4, this perspective argues that the Crips were originally the Avenue Cribs, a name derived from the African American Avenues Street Gang, and later became the Crips. Version 5, a more recent and less credible history ties the name to Superman and Kryptonite, phonetically spelling and abbreviating to Crip. Version 6, a sixth version suggests that the name came from the nickname for a cousin of one of the founding members who was injured and confined to a wheelchair. Version 7, Black Gang historian Akil Est Batani Kalfani offers another perspective, believing that the formation of the Crips was a continuation of the social rebellion against bigotry and racism after the Watts riots of 1969. Other versions tell of typographical errors in newspapers and African American gang members' assault methods, leading to the name Crip. The lack of consensus on the origin story reflects the complex and multifaceted history of the gang's formation. The Crips initially had political intentions, inspired by the Black Panther movement, and sought to provide protection against other African American street gangs. Raymond Washington's influence led to the gang's inception, with the Crips growing rapidly in numbers and power. Despite the prevalent myth that Stanley Williams was a co-founder, some original members contest his role in the founding. Williams later became a notable figure for his anti-gang work while on death row. The first Crip activity started around Fremont High School in late 1969, as they committed robberies, assaults, and extortion. Their reputation quickly grew as a dangerous and violent gang. As the Crips expanded, other youth groups formed their gangs in self-defense. Even within the Crips, a unique set of names and individuality prevailed, leading to internal violence. Stanley Tookie Williams explained the choice to join a gang as one between being a victim or an aggressor. Many young African Americans felt they had limited options, contributing to the growth of gang culture. The period of 1969 to 1970 witnessed a transformation in the African American street gang landscape, with the rise of the Crips epitomizing the evolving complexity and violence of gang life. Even among the Crips themselves, the multifarious nature of their origin story mirrors the fragmented and individualistic nature of the gang, setting the stage for both collaboration and conflict within the broader gang community. The late 1960s and early 1970s saw a turbulent time in South LA, California, with the emergence of gang culture. The Avenue Boys, including Notorious leaders Craig Munson, Stanley Tookie Williams, and Raymond Washington, ruled the streets with a unique style of dress that oozed intimidation. Dressed in A1 Capone-style hats, leather coats, and sharkskin pants, they walked with closed umbrellas or walking sticks, symbolizing power. During this time, African American students were bused to predominantly white schools, leaving them vulnerable to victimization. Williams, Washington, and Michael Conception began terrorizing students, stealing leather-sleeved varsity jackets and swiftly gathering a significant following. A turning point came with an attack on Sylvester Scott and Benson Owens, students at Centennial High School. The confrontation led to a declaration, "Don't mess with anyone from Piru Street." This marked the genesis of the first African American-based Piru gang. Scott and Benson, both residents of Piru Street, founded separate Piru gangs. Initially using blue handkerchiefs, they later adopted red to distinguish themselves, giving birth to what is now known as the Blood gangs. Interestingly, Piru Street had once been a predominantly Mexican neighborhood, housing a Mexican street gang. But by the time of the assault on Owens and Scott, the neighborhood had become largely African American. The early 1970s saw the establishment of the Piru Gang as a rival to other African American street gangs. The largest and most violent gang was the Crip Gang, an alliance of different sets that identified with the blue color. By late 1971, the battle lines were drawn. The Crips targeted non-Crip gangs, expanding into territories like the Brims. The summer of 1972 marked a major conflict between the Crip and Piru gangs. The Pirus' loss to a Crip set led to a meeting, uniting non-Crip associated gangs under the red-colored handkerchief, forming the Blood Alliance. Multiple narratives recount the formation of the Blood Alliance, but one thing is certain: until 1972, African American street gangs were rivals, outnumbered by the Crips. The 110 or Harbor Freeway divided LA into East and West, further aligning West Coast Black street gang members with either the Bloods or Crips. The Piru gangs made Centennial High School the base for the Blood-associated gangs, mirroring the Crips' association with Washington High School. Blood gangs also emerged in housing projects, leading to a surge in gang populations and a rivalry marked only by colors and membership numbers. For many African American youth, joining a street gang was a survival tactic.
Socioeconomic pressures left little option but relocation or victimization.
As the number of African American gang members increased, so did the violence, attracting media attention and perpetuating stereotypes.
The 1970s introduced another grim trend, Crip-on-Crip violence. Allies became enemies, escalating violence in Southern California.
The period laid the foundation for a fierce rivalry that continues to resonate, illustrating the complexity and dynamism of gang culture. The Bloods and the Crips, two forces that emerged from the streets, shaped the social fabric of Los Angeles, leaving a legacy of both resistance and tragedy. As the 1980s dawned, the Crip and Blood gang violence reached new heights. The expansion into narcotics trafficking not only facilitated migration but also served as a catalyst for conflict.
Some gang members, desperate to escape the escalating violence of Southern California, sought refuge with family or extended family members in other states. But the absence of organized drug markets in these new territories presented an opportunity too tempting to resist. For the Crips, the 1980s ushered in a significant innovation. Crack cocaine, a highly addictive and inexpensive form of cocaine, became their golden ticket. The profits generated from the trafficking of crack were enormous, and some Cripsets leveraged this capital to penetrate other drug markets. This entrepreneurial spirit expanded their influence, earning them a national reputation and respect. But the rewards of the drug trade were not without risks. As gang members established intricate networks spanning both local and nationwide areas, they brought with them the violent rivalry that had marked their existence in Los Angeles. The battle lines were redrawn in new neighborhoods, with inflating drug prices further fueling the flames of conflict. By the mid-1980s, the scope of African American gang members had swelled to an estimated 30,000 in the Los Angeles area alone. The proliferation of Crip gangs is particularly notable. From just 8 known Crip gangs in 1972, the number grew to 45 by 1978, 109 by 1982, and a staggering 199 individual Crip gangs by the late 1990s. The decade's expansion into new territories and lucrative drug markets led to a significant rise in both influence and violence. Crip-on-Crip violence, a trend that emerged in the 1970s, continued to escalate in Southern California. The legacy of the 1980s, marked by opportunism and rivalry, set the stage for what was to come in subsequent years. In this era of turmoil and profit, two central truths remained: the allure of power and money continued to draw in new members, while the violence and struggle for dominance kept the stakes perilously high. The intricate web of rivalries and alliances was now not just a local phenomenon but a national one, with the Bloods and Crips at the heart of a complex and evolving landscape. The 1980s were a time of growth, conflict, and change. With the rise of crack cocaine and the expansion into new territories, the gangs were moving in new directions, and the repercussions of these choices were yet to be fully understood. The later part of the 1990s bore witness to a climate of heightened tension and turbulence, both within the world of street gangs and in the public consciousness. Local law enforcement, recognizing the escalating violence, formed a special task force. Though success was limited, violence between the Bloods and Crips did decrease, a testament to the force's relentless efforts. In Los Angeles, the complex interplay between race, business relationships, and gang alliances was evolving. Historically, Black and Latino street gangs had maintained a shaky truce, and at times, even collaborated. For instance, the mid-1990s saw Looters Park Piru, an African-American gang, form a unique business alliance with a Latino gang they nicknamed Looters Park 70. This relationship went beyond mere business, with the Latino gang backing up their African-American counterparts. But the early 1990s also saw the expansion of blood gangs to the East Coast. Inside the notorious walls of Rikers Island in New York City, the United Blood Nation Gang was born in 1993. Born out of necessity to protect themselves from the dominant Hispanic prison gangs, the formation of this new gang marked a new chapter in the history of the Bloods. As the decade wore on, the demographic shifts in areas like Compton and South Los Angeles created tensions that extended beyond gang rivalry. With a significant increase in Latino population and a corresponding decrease in African Americans, resentment grew between the two races. These tensions were exacerbated among youth involved in gangs.
In 1980, African Americans comprised 80% of the neighborhood. By 2000, their share had dropped to 40%, while Latinos grew to 60%. The shifting demographics also brought about changes in the criminal enterprises of street gangs. As the 1990s progressed, gangs diversified into money-making crimes like ID theft, credit card theft, and further expansion into drug trafficking. Even rival gangs found common ground in these lucrative endeavors, though the mix of business with violence remained a volatile one. A sour dope deal could lead to deadly consequences, especially when involving violent street gang members. The 1990s was a period of transformation for African American gangs. The racial dynamics, business relationships, and criminal activities all experienced significant shifts. It was a time when new alliances were forged, old rivalries were rekindled, and the boundaries between gangs began to blur. From the formation of the United Blood Nation on the East Coast to the changing face of Compton and South Los Angeles, the decade was marked by both evolution and conflict. The uneasy truce with Latino gangs, the rise of new criminal enterprises, and the demographic shifts within traditional strongholds of African American gangs painted a picture of a complex and ever-changing landscape. The 1990s served as a pivotal moment in gang history, shaping the modern landscape of gang culture and setting the stage for the challenges and opportunities of the new millennium. The early 2000s marked a turning point in gang violence, with racial tensions spilling over into some of the most brutal crimes. A particularly harrowing episode unfolded in late July 2006, when 4 members of the Avenues Gang, an established Mexican street gang, were convicted of federal hate crimes. Shockingly, these were charges usually reserved for white supremacists. Alejandro Bird Martinez and 2 fellow gang members were out joyriding when they spotted Kenneth K. Wilson, a black man, parking his car. In a chillingly calculated move, they ambushed Wilson, riddling him and his vehicle with bullets from an arsenal of firearms. This horrifying crime, and the subsequent convictions, sent shockwaves through the community and media, leading to speculation that a race war had erupted between some Crip sets and Latino street gangs. A surge in black Latino assaults, notably between East Coast Crip sets and the Florencia 13 Latino gang, fueled these fears. The assaults seemed to indicate a racial conflict on the surface, but a closer investigation revealed a drug trafficking dispute at the heart of the violence. As the feud escalated, the shootings and killings multiplied. Gang members from both sides began to see individuals from the opposing race as targets, and derogatory remarks only intensified the animosity. Yet, despite the alarming violence and racially charged rhetoric, experts warned against drawing broad conclusions about a full-scale race war between African American and Latino gangs. These incidents were likely outliers, extreme responses to specific conflicts rather than a general trend. Still, the July 2006 case in LA serves as a grim reminder that street gangs can and will resort to committing hate crimes as a solution to their problems. Gang respect, a value central to the culture, often found its expression in violent attacks and fear. But this particular incident revealed a dark and unsettling layer to gang warfare. A racially motivated murder, not driven by ideology but by a twisted sense of opportunity and disrespect, exposed the fragility of the ties that bind different racial and ethnic groups within the world of street gangs. The 2000s thus marked a period where racial tensions became more pronounced in specific conflicts between African American and Latino gangs. The horrifying episode in 2006 showed the potential for racial animosity to escalate into outright hate crimes. While this may not signal a broader trend, it illustrates the complexity and danger of gang relationships as they continue to evolve into the new millennium. It's a stark reminder of the volatile mix of race, respect, and violence that can spark a fire, threatening to engulf entire communities. In the landscape of African American street gangs, the adoption of membership indicia and symbols previously used by Latino street gangs marked a significant shift in identity and methods of operation. This shift not only exemplified the gang's dedication to their cause but also laid the groundwork for a systematic and methodical escalation in violence. African American gangs began to employ graffiti to mark their territory, much like Latino gangs. They listed the names of their set members in this graffiti, creating a sense of community and ownership. The geographical area a Crip gang originated from was known as the hood or neighborhood, and recruitment often came from within these boundaries.
The size of a gang set was directly tied to its power and fearfulness. A popular saying emerged throughout Los Angeles County, reflecting the relentless growth and intimidation of the Crips: "Crips don't die, they multiply." Crip gangs like Park Village Crips, Grape Street Crips, and Avalon Garden Crips became household names, each one symbolizing a violent, ruthless, and cunning identity. As rivalries intensified, so did the tools of violence. Fistfights transformed into gun battles. Gangs like the Crips began arming themselves with everything from small-caliber handguns to high-powered rifles, forcing other gangs, including the Bloods, to follow suit. Gun violence became the primary way to settle disputes, and the streets of Los Angeles County erupted in chaos. Retaliation became a central theme of this new wave of violence. The pain of losing a homeboy was avenged with brutality and aggression, often leading to even more horrific acts of violence. Drive-by shootings became a common occurrence, and even gang funerals were not spared from retaliatory attacks. For many African American youth, the choice seemed limited: be the aggressor or become the victim. Gang membership swelled, and as drug trafficking became a major source of income, violence further escalated. Old rivalries between Los Angeles and Compton gangs were reignited with the formation of new African American street gangs. Alliances were forged for protection from the dominant and aggressive Crips, leading to a united front known as the Bloods. Violence between these factions became planned, calculated, and sometimes opportunistic, driven by chance encounters. The Crips' numerical advantage drove them to ever greater acts of violence, while the Pirates, a subset of the blood-aligned gangs, earned a reputation as the most violent. Violence was not just a means to an end, but the vehicle for establishing street respect and reputation. This era marked a dramatic increase in violence and brutality, with gang members' reputation and respect often equated with their capacity for aggression and force. The choice of violence, once used as a last resort, had become the first option, an integral part of the gang identity. The symbols and methods adopted from Latino gangs were now fully integrated into African American street gangs, leading to an even more complex and volatile environment. The streets were no longer just battlegrounds, they were statements, messages, and warnings, written in the language of violence. Graffiti holds a significant role in the world of street gangs. It serves as a form of communication, identity, and a symbolic expression of power. For Crip and Blood gangs, graffiti is a complex language that encompasses not just their beliefs and allegiances but also reveals intricate social structures and practices. Both Crip and Blood gangs share graffiti writing behaviors with Latino and Asian gangs. The artwork often contains the gang name and set, as well as a roster of set members. These gangs tend to operate in small subsets, usually containing only 3 to 12 members, and sometimes the graffiti roster may list only a portion of the membership. Interestingly, like Hispanic street gangs, those named on the graffiti do not necessarily have to be present at its creation. Color is not just a mere choice, it carries meaning and identity. Crip gangs tend to use black and blue paint, whereas Blood gangs favor black and red. The symbolism runs so deep that Blood gang graffiti written in blue paint may be accompanied by a corrective note: "This paint is red." This careful adherence to colors underscores the significance of visual symbols in gang culture. The rivalry between Crips and Bloods also manifests in their graffiti. Blood gang members might avoid using the letter C due to its association with the Crips, and likewise, some Crip members may avoid the letter B due to its connection to the Bloods. When these letters are used, they might be crossed out with an X, representing the rejection and disdain for the rival gang. Tattoos further cement this identity, often featuring gang names or slogans, marking the body as a living canvas of allegiance and pride. This exploration of graffiti unveils the rich tapestry of symbolism and meaning that street gangs weave into their surroundings. These visual markers serve as declarations of territory, tributes to members, and stark warnings to rivals. They reflect the deep connections between gangs and their communities and provide a window into the values, hierarchies, and conflicts that shape their world. In the hands of Crip and Blood gang members, a spray can transform into a pen that writes a distinct narrative of unity, defiance, and honor. Every line, color, and symbol is a testament to their struggle, aspirations, and identity, etched permanently onto the walls of their neighborhoods.
In the intricate world of gang culture, the body itself becomes a canvas for expression, identity, and allegiance.
Tattoos have evolved as one of the powerful mediums to convey these messages among African American gang members.
Let us delve deeper into the realm of tattoos and other body modifications, unraveling the symbolism and significance they hold. Tattoos, once uncommon among the majority of African American gang population, have seen a surge in prevalence. These tattoos are more than mere adornment, they serve as evidence of membership to a specific set or gang. The ink symbols and images have the same function as stylized clothing, graffiti, and hand signs, encapsulating a multitude of meanings and intentions. The tattoo can offer a greeting to a fellow member, issue a challenge to a rival, or intimidate both peers and non-gang individuals.
These marks permanently etch a member's commitment and identity, and their presence carries the weight of belonging and purpose. But the expression doesn't end with tattoos. In keeping up with trends, African American gang members have also been known to brand, burn, and pierce themselves. These body modifications are all part of the gang lifestyle, each carrying its own unique significance and symbolism. Blood or Crip gang members adorned with these body modifications stand as living testimonies to their beliefs, loyalties, and the culture they are immersed in. The burns, brands, piercings, and tattoos form a visual language that communicates beyond words. They tell a story of unity, defiance, honor, and sometimes, personal struggles and triumphs. Whether seen as marks of beauty, bravery, or belonging, these body modifications are intricately woven into the fabric of gang life. They resonate with the shared experiences and values of the members, transcending the mere aesthetics of body art. In a world where symbols carry profound meaning, where colors define alliances, and where every sign is a part of a complex code, the tattoos and body modifications are more than skin deep. They are the indelible marks of a life chosen, a path walked, and an identity embraced.
They are the emblems of a culture that thrives in the shadows of society, yet stands bold and unapologetic in its expression. Amidst the noise and chaos of urban life, there emerges a form of communication as silent as it is potent. Within the African American gang culture, hand signs have been honed to perfection, becoming a unique language that transcends mere gestures. Let's explore the secret world of hand signs, the meanings they carry, and the profound impact they have on the lives of those who employ them. Crip and Blood gangs have developed hand signs as a form of silent communication, a way to greet, challenge, or even disrespect. These signs are flashed or thrown, terms that mean the hand sign was formed and shown to another person. This stylized greeting can quickly turn into a symbol of rivalry or contempt. A Crip gang member may form the letter C using his fingers in hand, while Blood gang members might form the letter B. These symbols can be shown individually or strung together, announcing not just allegiance to a gang but also identification with a specific set. But these hand signs are more than just silent salutations. They can have an intimidating effect on non-gang members. In some instances, flashing a hand sign has been the spark that ignited a conflict, escalating quickly into assaults or even murder. No insult goes unanswered, no matter how small. These signs are a complex language unto themselves, bearing resemblance to the alphabet for the deaf. Author Leon Bing observes that gang members identify themselves by signing with their hands in gestures similar to the alphabet for the deaf. Bing, 1991. In the streets, these hand signs are a crucial part of the identity and interaction within the gang culture. They are the unspoken codes, the silent dialogues that convey a myriad of emotions and intentions. They serve as both a connection between members and a barrier to outsiders, a world of meaning contained within the flick of a wrist or the bend of a finger. The language of hand signs speaks volumes about the intricate web of relationships, rivalries, and respect that forms the backbone of gang life. In an environment where words can be overheard and where silence carries power, hand signs become a vital tool for communication. They are the whispers of a hidden world, the signs of an unspoken understanding, the gestures that tell the story of a life less ordinary. This silent dialogue of the streets continues to evolve, reflecting the ever-changing dynamics of the gangs. A hand sign thrown today might carry a different meaning tomorrow, but its essence remains the same, a manifestation of identity, a signal of belonging, and a silent call to arms in a world that communicates through a language all its own. Clothing can be seen as a simple means of expression or fashion, but within the world of street gangs, it becomes a language all its own. The fabric, colors, brands, and accessories carry meaning and allegiance, defining identity and territory. Let's venture into the streets and explore how clothing becomes more than a mere outfit, but a uniform of power, respect, and allegiance within the gang culture. For the blood gangs, red and white are the colors that hold sway. These colors may be displayed in various ways, from shoelaces to baseball caps, each one a symbol of affiliation and pride. Some specific sets within the Bloods, such as the Limehood Pirates, may use lighter colors like light green to identify themselves. Crip gang members tend to wear blue and white. If professional sportswear is chosen, it will likely align with the gang's colors, or the team's logo, initials, or name may carry specific meaning to the gang. Neutral colors such as black or khaki are also prevalent among many African American gang members. The clothing style has evolved over the last 40 years, shifting from bib overalls to brand-name sports gear. But no matter the fashion trend, the presence of red or blue, or other symbolic accessories, continues to signify gang affiliation. In this world, attire is not merely a fashion choice but a street uniform. It can trigger immediate recognition and response from both peer and rival gang members. A specific brand of athletic shoe or baseball cap may become part of the ensemble, turning ordinary clothing items into symbols of loyalty and belonging. However, this intricate language of clothing carries potential dangers. As gang attire becomes a popular clothing style among the general youth population, parents may unknowingly place their children in harm's way. By purchasing or allowing them to wear clothing associated with gang affiliation, they may draw unwanted attention and even provoke confrontation. Clothing within the gang culture is a reflection of a larger societal fabric woven with complexity, tradition, and unwritten rules. The colors worn on the streets speak of affiliation and rivalry, pride, and power. They mark the boundaries of turf, signal warnings, and celebrate victories. The threads of this street uniform are woven into the very fabric of gang life, a tapestry that reveals the intricate relationships, hierarchies, and the underlying tensions of a subculture that lives by its own code. In the world of gangs, clothing is more than mere appearance. It's an identity, a declaration, and a silent message that resonates in the hidden corners of urban life. It is a language spoken without words, a uniform worn with purpose, and a badge of belonging in a world that values respect, loyalty, and the courage to stand out. In the world of gangs, communication goes far beyond mere words. The language of African American street gangs, rich and multifaceted, serves as a complex code of honor, challenge, and allegiance. It's a language steeped in symbols, slang, and hidden meanings. Let's delve into the psychology and the nuanced tapestry of communication within these gangs. The term blood holds significant meaning. Thought to be an old African American slang term for brother, blood gang members often use it as a greeting. The letter B becomes a symbol to be revered or avoided, depending on affiliation. For example, blood gang members might say Bompton instead of Compton. Crip gang members identify with the color blue, as well as other dark colors like brown, black, and purple. The Grape Street Crips in Watts, California, uniquely use purple to mark their set. A common greeting among Crip gang members is cuz, a word symbolizing kinship. Both gangs use specific initials to signify status and intent. CK could mean Crip killer or cop killer. OG refers to an original gangster, a term denoting experience and status, while BG stands for baby gangster, a young gang member. Words like cluckhead or basehead refer to crack cocaine users, and the term mission ominously signifies a drive-by shooting. Verbal insults and challenges are common, with phrases like crab or slob serving as derogatory terms for rival gang members. Yet the threats are not just verbal. With the ease of access to firearms, gang members often choose guns over fists to settle disputes. Tensions can escalate quickly, turning a minor insult into a deadly confrontation. Rivalry between Blood and Crip gangs has been fierce and long-standing, but in the wake of significant social events like the Rodney King incident, an informal truce or common enemy has been noted. This change has even led to the symbolic act of flying the black rag, uniting once bitter rivals in common purpose. The spread of Crip gang sets across the nation, reaching approximately 800 sets with 30,000 to 35,000 members in 2002, reflects the evolution of a gang psychology deeply rooted in subtle behaviors, symbolism, and violence. Yet, even within this often brutal world, the effects of social events and the pressures of larger societal issues can lead to shifts in alliances and behaviors. These behaviors, far from random or chaotic, reveal an intricate system of communication and hierarchy within African American street gangs. Every word, gesture, color, and symbol carries weight and meaning. The complexity of this language is a mirror to the intricacies of gang life itself. Violence may be at the center of gang psychology, but it's intertwined with a sense of belonging, identity, and a code that governs actions and reactions. The psychology of gang life is more than a simple equation of crime and violence. It's a rich tapestry woven with loyalty, tradition, conflict, and survival. This dynamic landscape of communication, allegiance, and rivalry continues to evolve, reflecting the ever-changing face of urban life and the undercurrents of a world that thrives in the shadows, yet resonates with the broader struggles and triumphs of society itself. In the labyrinthine world of gangs, a seismic shift occurred with the rise of drug trafficking. From the mid-1970s, the allure of the drug business began to take hold, and the market exploded with substances such as PCP, marijuana, barbiturates, and amphetamines. The epoch-making moment came in the early 80s when African American street gangs, particularly the Crips and Bloods, entered the cocaine trade. By late 1981, the golden lure of cocaine began to shimmer in the neighborhoods of Los Angeles County, California. A new era had dawned, one of power, wealth, and influence, all fueled by the lucrative drug trade. Gang members soon discovered that the sale of cocaine could buy them luxuries unimaginable before. Prestige was no longer defined merely by territory or colors, but by exclusive homes, nice cars, expensive clothes, jewelry, and all the trappings of success. Youngsters as young as 12 found themselves caught in the allure of the trade, with teenagers as young as 14 able to make $100,000 a year. Crack cocaine became the preferred product, as gang members learned to convert powder into crack to double or triple their investments. The proliferation of this new, accessible lifestyle spread like wildfire across California, the surrounding states, and eventually the entire nation. African American gang drug operations became so sophisticated that they rivaled traditional organized crime syndicates. A shift in gang dynamics occurred as colors and rivalries were replaced with the pursuit of cocaine, cash investments, and sales territories. Business relationships developed, transcending traditional rivalries and even geographical locations. Bloods and Crips who were bitter rivals in Los Angeles could cooperate in cities like Seattle, Portland, or Denver to expand their drug operations. A new term was coined, the rock house, a place for manufacturing, selling, and sometimes using crack cocaine. An organized hierarchy emerged, with specific roles such as mules, street peddlers, lookouts, enforcers, and intelligence gatherers. The gang lifestyle morphed into a business, and some African American street gang families embraced it as an acceptable way of living. Within the structure of the gangs, subdivisions emerged, categorized by age, such as the OG, the gangster, the BG, baby gangster, and sometimes the TG, tiny gangster. Different levels of membership required varying degrees of commitment and loyalty, mirroring the hierarchical structure of conventional businesses. The consequences of this shift were profound. Millions of dollars flowed from the retail and wholesale sales of cocaine, crack, marijuana, and PCP. The larger sets collected vast sums, consolidating their power and influence. But the repercussions were not solely economic. The fusion of gangs and drug sales reshaped the very fabric of these organizations, turning them from mere territorial entities into sprawling, interconnected networks that reached across the nation and even beyond. This transformation changed not only the gangs themselves but also the communities they inhabited. The attraction of wealth, power, and status made the gang lifestyle an enticing path for many, even as it wrought destruction on the very neighborhoods they called home. The world of gangs had changed, and with it, an entire subculture had evolved, reflecting a more complex, and at times, paradoxical reality. In this world, rivalry and cooperation, violence and business acumen, tradition and innovation were intertwined, forging a new era of African American street gang history. The reverberations of this shift continue to echo across society, influencing law enforcement, community dynamics, and the future of an entire generation caught in the turbulent currents of change. The landscape of gang rivalries is as complex as it is shifting, and the early 2000s saw unexpected alliances amidst traditional animosities. The Crips, a name synonymous with power in the world of gangs, have always had the Bloods as their primary rivals. This intense rivalry has been a defining feature of street gang culture. But beyond this well-known enmity, other rivalries exist with gangs affiliated with the People Nation Alliance, including the likes of the Latin Kings, Black P Stones, Cobra Stones, Vice Lord Nation, and the El Rukins, many based in the Chicago area. The complexities of these rivalries are not just based on colors, territories, or traditions, but are often tied to the ever-changing dynamics of power and profit. For instance, the Crips' rivalry with the Latin Kings contrasts with their relationships with other gangs in the People Nation Alliance, illustrating the fluid nature of these relationships. In a striking turn of events, the early 2000s witnessed some Cripsets forming an alliance with the Chicago-based Gangster Disciples, a relationship that would have been unthinkable previously. These two formidable forces, traditionally rivals, found common ground in the pursuit of money, most likely through expanding drug trafficking operations. The pursuit of profit, it seems, can blur the lines of rivalry and forge unexpected partnerships. This same pattern held true for some Bloodsets, as they too made alliances with gangs that were historically considered rivals, notably the People Nation gangs based in the Midwest. The evolution of these relationships reflects a growing sophistication and complexity in gang operations. Rivalries were no longer fixed and immutable but could shift and evolve in response to opportunities and threats. The alliances between gangs that were traditionally rivals may seem paradoxical, yet they are emblematic of the fluid nature of power, influence, and ambition within the gang world. Such associations reveal a pragmatism that transcends traditional loyalties and illustrates the dynamic, adaptable nature of these groups. In the calculus of power, profit, and survival, old enmities could be set aside, and new alliances forged. These evolving relationships reveal a landscape that is ever-changing, driven by the relentless pursuit of power and profit, reflecting a reality that is as multifaceted and nuanced as the people and the communities that they inhabit. As gangs adapt and evolve, so too does the challenge of understanding them. The intricate web of rivalries and alliances creates a complex tapestry that resonates beyond the gangs themselves, shaping communities, law enforcement strategies, and societal perceptions. The shifting sands of rivalries and alliances continue to redefine the landscape of the African American street gang, underscoring the intricate, evolving nature of this critical aspect of modern urban life. The narrative of African American street gangs has been predominantly focused on the male members and their intricate relationships. However, women's roles, although less prominent, have their own complexities and significance. In the tumultuous world of African American street gangs, female gang members often portray themselves as having major roles. In reality, the majority of young women in this sphere play a very minor role. Their involvement typically manifests as supporting their male counterparts, often in ways that exploit traditional gender expectations. For example, it's not unusual for female gang members to hide narcotics or weapons for their male counterparts, taking advantage of societal perceptions to evade suspicion. Although women were rarely initiated into gangs through the same jumping in rituals as men, they still found ways to signal their affiliations, such as dressing down with either red or blue, depending on the gang's colors. Most often, females acted as auxiliary members for the male gangs with which they were associated. On occasion, they even participated in violence against rival gangs, breaking traditional gender roles. But the reality is that females have historically had a limited part in the daily gang operations, their contributions often overshadowed by their male counterparts. But this is not the full story. As times have changed, so too have the roles of women in gangs. In 2002, a significant development emerged in the Compton area with the formation of an all-female gang known as the Rainbow Crips. This group's female members were allegedly lesbian, hence the inclusion of the word rainbow in the name, reflecting a sense of identity and defiance against traditional norms. Anecdotal evidence suggested that this gang operated more like a party crew, yet its existence underscores a shift in the landscape, opening up a new chapter in the complex story of African American street gangs. The role of women in African American street gangs may be limited in comparison to their male counterparts, but their presence and evolving influence add an essential dimension to this multifaceted world. Whether serving as auxiliaries to male gangs or forging their unique path like the Rainbow Crips, female gang members reflect the diverse and dynamic nature of street gang culture. Their stories, though often overlooked, provide a richer understanding of the motivations, challenges, and opportunities within the African American street gang community. The recognition of women's roles and the evolution of their influence reveals a more nuanced picture of street gang culture, one that transcends gender lines and opens new avenues for exploration and understanding. In this complex and changing landscape, the stories of female gang members offer insights into the broader dynamics of power, identity, and community within African American street gangs. The roles they play, both big and small, offer a glimpse into a world that is as fluid and adaptable as it is resilient, reflecting the broader complexities of a life shaped by poverty, ambition, and survival. As we reach the conclusion of our exploration of the history of African American street gangs, the words of Sonika Shakur, also known as Monster Cody Scott, provide profound insight into the core principles that guide this complex and often brutal world. Shakur detailed in his book The 3 Stages of Reputation or Respect that an African American gang member must traverse before attaining the title of Original Gangster, OG.
Building the reputation of one's name as an individual. Building a synonymous connection between one's name and the particular gang set. Establishing oneself as a promoter of Crip or Blood, depending on the side of the color bar one belongs to. These tenets, while specifically articulated for African American gang members, resonate across all gang cultures. Respect and reputation become the central focus of gang life, with status growing in direct proportion to one's commitment and work for the gang. African American street gangs have indeed played a significant role in spreading the use of cocaine and the problems that come with addiction. The allure of the street gang lifestyle, tinged with fear and violence, continues to draw on those most susceptible, often from the disadvantaged and undereducated segments of the African American community. Such is the influence and impact of these street gangs that even something as quintessentially American as a high school football game in Los Angeles County, California, can be canceled to protect spectators and players from potential violence.
Conclusion: in the tapestry of African American street gangs, we find a world of complexity, violence, aspiration, desperation, and survival. From the intricate rivalries and alliances to the evolving roles of women, from the lucrative drug trade to the potent allure of respect and reputation, the phenomenon of street gangs is a reflection of broader social, economic, and cultural forces. It's a world that, though fraught with danger and often existing on society's margins, offers a lens into human nature and the conditions that shape it. It's a narrative that compels us to ask deeper questions about community, identity, poverty, and power. These gangs, with their intricate rules and often merciless practices, are not isolated anomalies but products of systemic challenges. They serve as both a mirror and a warning, reflecting the fractures in society and the past that some have taken to navigate them. As we reflect on this history, we must also consider the ongoing challenges and opportunities for intervention, understanding, and transformation. The story of African American street gangs is far from over. It continues to unfold, shaped by the struggles and dreams of those caught in this complex web.